One of the biggest misconceptions I had when starting out writing was the belief all scenes were created equally. I thought that as long as you were a good writer, you could write any type of scene with ease, whether they be romantic, psychological, violent, or joyful. Yeah, I was really wrong. All scenes are not created equally. Some scenes and actions are objectively more difficult to properly execute than others, and I found this out the hard way when writing my first fight scenes. I've seen a lot of questions on YouTube and Reddit about how to write an effective fight scene, so I thought this would be a good topic to cover with the video. And, of course, I will be using George R.R. Martin's writing as an example of what a pro does. Partially because my crippling laziness has convinced me to recycle this exact topic I did for Reddit for YouTube, but also because George R.R. Martin does a legitimately good job in crafting fight scenes. The fight I will use is the Hound vs. Beric. If you're a show watcher, this is from Season 3, Episode 5, Kissed by Fire. If you're a book reader, it's from A Storm of Swords, Chapter 34, Aria 6. So one of the biggest mistakes that a writer, novice or otherwise, could make when writing a fight scene is misinterpreting the narrative purpose of the scene. Many people think that all a fight scene is supposed to be is showing two characters being violent with each other. That is a really limiting way of thinking about something so complex. A fight scene, just like every other scene, needs to tell a story. Now I know, you may be thinking, how do I shove a story into the middle of two guys bashing each other's heads in? Well, my simple answer is you're overthinking it. The story is the violence between the two dudes. Or gals, I'm completely gender inclusive when it comes to my violence. When you start thinking of a fight as a mini story, with setup, action, calms, rises, and falls, you have the fundamentals for a fantastic fight scene. But enough of me trying to explain it, let's see how George R. Martin does it himself. "This cave is dark too," said the Hound, "but I'm the terror here. I hope your god's a sweet one, Dondarrion. You're going to meet him shortly." Unsmiling, Lord Beric laid the edge of his longsword against the palm of his left hand, and drew it slowly down. Just like with any narrative, Martin has set up our characters and their immediate relationship with each other. Even if you knew nothing else about the plot, you know the Hound wants to make Beric worm food, and that Beric has his sword drawn, ready to defend himself for what he suspects to be a serious fight. This is our setup, but something amazing happens when we read the next section of Beric's lines. "Blood ran dark from the gash he made, and washed over the steel. And then the sword took fire. Lit from below, his face was a death mask, his missing eye a red and angry wound. The sword was aflame from point to crossguard, but Dondarrion seemed not to feel the heat. He stood so still, he might have been carved of stone." Okay, so I couldn't have been the only one that thought that was really cool, right? Narratives are all about the delivery of information that either introduces new material to the plot, alters current material of the plot, or resolves existing material of the plot. In this fight, we get a huge new addition to the plot, something that we haven't seen before. Now this scene is so much bigger than a fight. It has become relevant to the plot as a whole, because we readers are wondering how and why Beric can do this. It's also just plain really cool. Have you ever read a fight scene of two huge men savagely beating each other's heads and thought, I'm kinda bored with this? Well, that is because seeing a fight and reading a fight are two completely different things. Movies can get away with having basic punches and kicks because the action is received extremely fast, with sound, movement, blood, and broken objects coming all at once in a matter of seconds. A written fight can only come one sentence at a time, so they have to be different. And this is where an economy of diversity comes in. Basically, it means the best way for a written fight scene to capture a reader is to vary what goes on in the scene. Reading about punching for 2 pages is boring. Reading about a full-on brawl with fists and kicks and swords and shields and environmental hazards and magic is exhilarating. Look at what Martin does with his economy of diversity. But when the Hound charged him, he moved fast enough. The flaming sword leapt to meet the cold one, long streamers of fire trailing in its wake like the ribbons the Hound had spoken of. Steel rang on steel. No sooner was his first slash blocked than Clegane made another, but this time Lord Beric's shield got in the way, and wood chips flew from the force of the blow. Hard and fast the cuts came, from low and high, from right and left, and each one Dondarrion blocked. The flame swirled about his sword and left red and yellow ghosts to mark its passage. Each move Lord Beric made fanned them and made them burn brighter, until it seemed as though the Lightning Lord stood within a cage of fire. Here we have a basic sword fight, but with the pivotal element of having fire involved. This paragraph begins, focuses on, and ends with fire, framing the entire battle around this unique, diverse experience that the reader is journeying through. Clegane caught one blow high on his shield, and a painted dog lost a head. He countercut, and Dondarrion interposed his own shield and launched a fiery backslash. Along with a bit of the last section, now we have shield action involved, and the detail that Clegane's shield is breaking. Not only has Martin diversified the focus again, he has demonstrated great storytelling within fight, though really subtly. With Beric's fires growing brighter and the Hound's shield shattering, Martin is displaying that the longer this conflict goes on, the worse it is for the Hound. The best part about it though is that he didn't have to explicitly state this. We readers can just understand that from the circumstances of the fight. The Hound moved to the right, but Dondarrion blocked him with a quick sidestep and drove him back the other way, toward the sullen red blaze of the fire pit. Clegane gave ground until he felt the heat at his back. A quick glance over his shoulder showed him what was behind, and almost cost him his head when Lord Beric attacked anew. Again, Martin has diversified the events of the fight. Now the Hound not only has to worry about this murder-happy firebender, there's a pit of flames behind him too. This raises the stakes and keeps the reader interested for new things to come. Sandor Clegane had fought his way back to his feet with a reckless counterattack. Not until Lord Beric retreated a pace did the Hound seem to realize that the fire that roared so near his face was his own shield, burning. With a shout of revulsion, he hacked down savagely on the broken oak, completing its destruction. The shield shattered, one piece of it spitting away, still afire, while the other clung stubbornly to his forearm. His efforts to free himself only fanned the flames. His sleeve caught, and now his whole left arm was ablaze. Now Martin has diversified to a paragraph where the Hound's own shield has become the enemy. He tosses it down, shatters it, but still catches fire nonetheless. And I can say with certainty that all this diversity was not an accident. The job of a writer when constructing fight scenes is to do 90% of your heavy lifting beforehand. Meaning one needs to create a scenario and setting to best maximize the entertainment potential of their scene of conflict. Martin put the Hound, a top 5 fighter on the continent and a hater of fire, against Beric, a renowned knight and a fire user, in order to create awesome tension. He also did it to give an opportunity for plot-relevant information to rise. It is efficient, quickly paced, and most importantly, really fun. Another massive mistake that I've seen demonstrated in fight scenes is that nothing comes of them. People fight, they get tired or pass out, and then nothing of the plot really changes after. Fights need consequences, but those consequences don't always have to be deaths. The Hound's cold steel plowed into Lord Beric's flesh where his shoulder joined his neck, and clove him clean down the breastbone. The blood came rushing out in a hot black gush. Lord Beric's knees folded slowly, as if for prayer. When his mouth opened, only blood came out. The Hound's sword was still in him as he toppled face forward. The dirt drank his blood. Here is the initial consequence that Martin presents us. The Hound wins, Beric dies, the end. Just seeing this, it is plain to see why this couldn't have stood as the resolution. The consequence does nothing to justify the fight, because nothing in the narrative or the plot has effectively changed. We end up in the same place we started when Arya and the Hound came to the Brotherhood without banners. But then... "Please," Sandor Clegane rasped, cradling his arm. "I'm burned. Help me. Someone help me." He was crying. "Please." Arya looked at him in astonishment. "He's crying like a little baby," she thought. We see the Hound far more vulnerable than ever before, almost pathetic. Martin has changed and evoked hidden character details because of the fight, details that may go on to ripple throughout the story and change the audience's perception going forward. As was said before, consequences of fight scenes don't need to be deaths. Heck, they don't even need to affect the characters themselves. The consequences need to be the addition, furthering, or subtraction of plot-relevant information, because those things are the goals of all scenes, violent or otherwise. But we still aren't finished. "You go to hell, Hound," she screamed at Sandor Clegane in helpless, empty-handed rage. "You just go to hell." "He has," said a voice scarce stronger than a whisper. When Arya turned, Lord Beric Dondarrion was standing behind her, his bloody hand clutching Thoros by the shoulder. At the very end of the chapter, we get to see that Beric is actually still alive. Somehow, someway, he survived getting quote-unquote cloved clean down the breastbone. This is the narrative consequence of the fight. Whoever these followers of R'hllor are, the reader now knows they can either stave off death or come back from the dead completely. This information drastically changes our narrative expectation going forward, especially for Beric and his men. Not all fight scene consequences need to be this dramatic, as not all of Martin's are, but the consequences need to be visible to the reader. George R.R. Martin does a great job of doing his work early, setting the stage, diversifying this scene, and delivering on palpable changes to the narrative. This fight scene between the Hound and Beric tells a story. It is diverse in its actions, and it has real consequences for the plot. This goes without saying, but there are a ton of other fight scenes in the books and show that follow this style too. I just couldn't fit them all in this video. Let me know down in the comments what is your favorite fight scene from the series, and I will see you all again soon.